Hi, everybody. It's Karen and Kathleen Casey here today, and hopefully that you can hear. And please let me know um, if you can hear me. And Kathleen, go ahead and say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Just want to make sure everybody can hear us. So if you could just type in the chat or question area that you can hear. Okay, great. Looks like everybody can hear fine. Great. Thank you, guys. Very good. So I want to welcome you today to something a little different. I thought that this summer we'd spend a little bit of time getting to know some of our fellow digital artists, and not only in class but in the basic community of digital art. And I think it's real important that we do this because it opens up, it broadens our horizons, and we can really see how other artists are painting with Painter. And today we have Kathleen Casey. And Kathleen, I wanted to ask you just a couple of questions before you start painting. And maybe
hmm
you could tell us a little bit about how you came um, to how should I say that? How did you come to digital painting? What inspired you to come over and get interested in digital painting after uh, so much of a career in traditional art?
Uh, let's see. At work, I used to run a gallery and a frame shop, and we had a lot of people that came in and asked around, sometime around 2002 or 2003. A lot of people start coming in and ask for restoration on photos. Now, we did that for a long time, um, just through, building with layers and um, coloring with inks, photographs, and just repairing old pieces. But I started doing it digitally with Photoshop about that time, and just started digging in more and more. And I guess around 2011, I got a Mac, and it came with Painter X3. And so I started playing with it that way. I had already been doing some painting using Photoshop, but at that time, gosh, I think I started with Photoshop 7, something like that. So then went on to, I got a new Photoshop, I think it was CS6, I believe at the time, and started using that, but then really enjoyed the freedom that the Painter program offered. It was more of a painterly feel to it. And I started working more with it because I was getting just kind of stale in my artwork and wanted to expand what I could do with my artwork. So I scanned in some of my old pieces and started reworking them. And by the time, I guess it was 2015, I started really reworking a lot of stuff and then painting some new stuff, taking some classes. The first class I believe I took was with Melissa Gallo, and learned a lot from her. And then started working with it on my own, just playing with it, and really enjoyed the freedom. And with the last couple of years, and then with your class, I really you just kind of allowed me to just take off, so, and do something totally different. So that's the short, sweet history of me and my digital painting.
That's fascinating. It's always interesting to hear, where people come from, how they came to know Painter and where they got started, and it's really a fun fact. So thanks for sharing that with us. Um, and how long then have you been using Painter then? For about how many years?
About 6 years, I guess.
Wow, that's excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
about 6 years. Like I said, it started with the 3X or X3, and I want to say that was 2011
Yeah,
that I started that. So
fabulous.
And
Fabulous.
but
Now, I have one final question before we get going. When
sure.
when you started painting with Painter, did it take you a while to find your your style, the
Oh,
the brushes
yes.
that you wanted to use, the things that made magic in your hands?
Yes, and really, I've only in the last year felt comfortable with moving around in Painter. I mean, I still fumble through a lot of paintings, and I have a lot of happy accidents and a lot of bad layers that I scrap. But uh, yeah, it has really been in the last year that I've kind of felt a lot more comfortable. I've always had kind of a similar style. People really couldn't tell the difference between my oil paintings or my acrylics and my digital. And so my style has always kind of been the same. The look that even though I will move away from it a little bit, it seems like I always move right back into that. So it's just something that just kind of sticks with you. And I think as you do it, everybody develops their own style. So
Yeah, I think that that's important because, as an instructor, I find that sometimes because I have to jump around so much to different brushes and this, that, and the other thing, my style tends to get lost a little bit, and I have to come back to it. So I think
yeah,
that that's one
exactly.
of the dangers. You have to really work on, finding that place that, is your particular way of expressing Painter, and
Well, I kind of
I think you do a beautiful job of it.
well, thank you. Thank you. When you're working on a painting and you get into that right side of your brain, that is that creative mode, kind of everything else zones out. I think that's when you really start to stop thinking about all of the details that this program involves, and just kind of let yourself go and hit some different colors, some different brushes, do some different things with the brushes. And that's been a big challenge for me is this last year, is I really made myself use the brush controls and try to get more of what I want with one single brush rather than constantly changing brushes.
Yeah,
So
good advice. Good advice. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and let Kathleen do her beautiful thing here. And there is a question panel, so I will be covering any questions that you might have during the session. Um, the one thing I can say about GoToWebinar is that if you lose sound, if the picture cuts out on you, usually give it about 30 seconds. If it doesn't come back, then go ahead and sign out of the meeting and come back in, and that usually will correct it. But that
okay,
seems to be not happening quite as much anymore, so hopefully we'll have a nice smooth session. I'll just remind Kathleen, just save, every once in a while,
yeah,
just in case.
yes, most
Okay.
definitely.
All right,
All right,
everybody, and I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen, and thanks again.
sure. Hi. Well, as you all have noticed with some of my pieces, I do a lot of loose pieces, although they're not loose. Since my background is in painting, I try to use colors to tell a story, but also tell distance and value in a piece. So um, that is one of the things I tend to do quite a bit, and I want that color to work for me, make it a little easier to tell a story. So I made a few papers here, which I use papers quite often because I like texture. And I've got one here which is not mine. It is from one of Melissa Gallo's classes way back in, I think it was a Photoshop, painting with Photoshop class. So anyway, I borrowed one of those and brought it over, and then I made one that I call Pine Trees, and then I have another one that's Bushy Weeds, And then I have one that is old canvas, and I change the lights and the darks and, you know, the rotation and scale depending on what I'm looking for. And then sometimes I just don't use them at all, but it's whatever I feel I want to move through and what I want to relate to the background. This piece is actually a fall piece, an early fall piece, and I like those colors. They tend to grab attention. So usually a lot of times what I sell is early spring and early fall pieces. So I just kind of put this, worked on the sky a little bit, just kind of bringing some color in before we started. And then I'll work on this background. I try to do these different layers in the beginning. And Karen and I were talking about this. I'm having to analyze what I do when I do it. So sometimes I will sound like I've lost my brain, but it's there. It'll come back. So give me a second. I've got a few brushes that I pulled out for this particular piece. I had another piece that I was doing called Approaching Storm, but I'm going to use the brushes that are in this for the same way I was doing with the other one. So anyway, I did make myself a brush category, and I really enjoy doing this. I'll take some of Karen's brushes and brushes that I've made, variants, a lot of them, off of things that work with my style of painting. And so I've made it so I can carry it through and save it, and they tend to make my life a lot easier than going through the different brush categories. And I did just load some of my staples that I go back to quite often. So I'm going to start here with background. I'm going to use this pine tree background to kind of give myself some texture as I do this distance. Let me lighten this so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Still keep track. But do some of these background trees here. Let me find a color. I really like this artist's work, so I pulled up her palette, or actually one of her pieces. I have a file that I save artists' work in called Art I Aspire To. So I will pull things up here and use their colors sometimes, and it makes the beginning of my painting easier. And then I go to the color wheel. So I'm going to pull in maybe some of this dark and see where I'm at here. I may need to go. I don't know if I'll stay with this brush or not. I'm going to work around these trees. Let's see. This is one of the brushes that I really like. It's one of those brushes that come with Painter, and we've made several different things from it. Karen has made several brushes off of it that I just love, and gives me kind of that look and feel that I want. I have an older brush that is from a dab of Melissa Gallo's that I use also, and it's a little different. See, here's that thing, Karen. I'm not sure why this is doing this. I think I'll go back there.
Yeah, I see that. Is it just?
I'm not sure what. It just started that morning.
Just this one brush that's doing it, or several of them?
Let's see. Let me go over here to this one. Yeah, see, it's that one also. This is the worn bristle brush.
Is it going to different libraries, or is it staying within the same library?
No, I moved them all to my landscape library because I was, I learned that in 18 that it made things much easier if I had them all in one library. So
Yeah, Barbara says that she's getting that message almost with all her brushes. Yeah, I'll
okay.
have to find out about that. Like I said, I haven't seen it. Barbara, are you on a Mac or a PC? That would be interesting to note too.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah, she's on a Mac as well, so I'll see what I can find out about that one.
That may be a Mac issue. They all have their own issues, don't they? So I put in, now this will probably not stay like this, but I do tend to put in backgrounds and move around, and it gives me ideas to do different things. And sometimes it stays, sometimes it doesn't. If I go back over here to, let's just see what happens whenever I switch to, see, I've got, yeah. Let's see if it does it with this one. No, didn't do it with that one. I wonder if it has to do with the size. Anyway, it may be. I made this little brush just so that it's actually the expressionist brush, but I didn't want to have to change the shape of it as I was working. So
You always start with a sketch usually, Kathleen?
usually, yes. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't. It just depends on if I'm doodling, you know. Sometimes a painting will start with me checking out brush types. I tend to make libraries. I actually have a little, it's kind of like a notepad, and I put all of my digital stuff in it. And so I will take and I will go through and look at all of the brushes and what I can do with them, and try to keep that in my notes so that if I go back and I'm trying to get a particular look and I know I've had it, but I can't find it again, then it's in my brush library. And makes things a lot easier. When you lay in a painting, when you're doing it traditionally, the darks come before your lights. And because in traditional painting, it is thick over thin, and your thin colors are your darks, and your light colors are your thick paint. So those traditionally go on last. So I still have a tendency to work like that. And so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And I'm using the tree paper. And so let's just put some of this color in. All right, now I'm gonna go back over here into my mixer pad. I kind of like some of her green colors that turn to fall. I did notice, Karen, that sometimes whenever I use this mixer pad and I use the multiple sample colors, I have had it not pull any color at all over, and then sometimes it does. Let's see if it changes. You know, see, sometimes it won't change at all. I'll have to go back over here and use this, and then it'll move my color somewhat. So not sure what that's about. Anyway, I'm going to do some of these. Let me start another layer here for my tree branches.
I notice you like to work with a lot of paper texture too. That's really pretty. It adds a lot to the paint and the way it applies.
Yeah, it does. It gives it a little bit of a character, and it does have a tendency to look a little more like my traditional painting, because I'll I have a lot of textures usually in my work. I made this little piece right here, and it's actually out of a photograph of black and white of just some weeds, and moved it in here, and it kind of gives you the look of branches and things. Like if you do, let's go back over here to this one, maybe it won't. Yeah, as you can see how you can get that look of branches through that, and it makes it really a really nice texture. Back over here.
Yeah, you just feel free to get into that zone and just paint. So we're enjoying watching it.
Let's see. I did move my tree over here. Yeah, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to ask us. I'll zone out. So. And that's another thing I do is work all over the canvas. I never realized how much I move around a canvas until I started painting digitally.
Randy has a question. Are you using a reference image, and do you always paint with the grid lines? Thanks.
Oh, I need to remove those. I had forgotten they were up there. Yeah, actually, sometimes I do paint with the grid lines. Sorry, I meant to remove those. They really get on a lot of people's nerves. Now, I was looking at my center of interest, my point of interest is right in here. So I sometimes I'll forget as I'm working, so I will leave that up, and it just is kind of a reminder to me. So a lot of people it really bothers, and but I do have it. And a reference image, I have several photographs that I'm looking at and kind of making them into one. So I'm using elements from each photograph, and I didn't bother to scan them in, because it starts out one way, and then as I move on, it usually doesn't look anything like the original that I started with. Unless this is a commission for someone, then it will look like what they want it to look like. But for me, as I'm just working, I have a tendency to just kind of do my thing, and I go with it. So I'm gonna put a little bit of the tree trunks in here before I forget. Use my sketch brush, and these tree trunks are white, but at this moment I think I'm gonna use kind of maybe a gray. they'll get lighter, but just kind of want to keep a look out for my tree trunks before I lose them all, which I do have a tendency to sometimes do that. And I will go back after I drop a lot of this and go back over things, which is kind of the way I do. I don't know if there's really a method to my madness. It just tends to happen certain ways. As I've said, when I get into that zone, I tend to just zone out and do what feels right that I want to be doing. And then sometimes I just dump the whole thing. So I just have a tendency to do that. I'm gonna lighten this layer a little bit, and I'm gonna leave that where it's at. I'm gonna leave the sky, I think. Let me do a little bit more softness here, and then I'll probably drop everything. I think there's some grays back here. What if lavenders? You've got, let's see what I've got. You have distance back here, and distance tends to be cooler and grayer. And so I want to just kind of put some of that in before I lose that, and before I drop everything. Let's see. I think I'll drop these 3. Hitting the wrong button. My little keypad here is underneath me, so I'm not always hitting the right thing. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and drop those. And then I'll look.
A lot of people are asking about your papers, if they are available to purchase, or and I don't know how to answer that. So.
Yeah, they will. I tell you what I'll do for this class. I'll the 2, I can share these 2. This one I'm not sure. This may be on one of the old Painter programs with their papers. I'm not sure. But these 2, I can definitely share these 2. And so for this, since we're all in this same group together, I think we'll post these with a brush that I'll be showing you in a little bit. And so then you just kind of go with those and see what you think about them. I mean, because you can make your own. Skip's got a really good videos on that, and I think that was posted. Was that in our Painter Club forum, or I think Deborah posted it.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't know if Debbie is here. Yeah, Debbie is here. Hi, Debbie. I know that on his website, skipallenpaints.com, he's got a lot of videos on creating paper textures. And it seems to me it might have been Painter Club. It might have been Painter Club this year, part 1, but more towards the first of the year, I think January or February, where we posted he did post something on paper textures. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, it seems like I found it on, maybe it's on tutorials.
Yeah, and Barbara also says, yes, of course, he's got lots of videos on YouTube about creating papers too, so you can go to his YouTube.
Right. And so it's kind of nice. So I've only gotten to about I guess, number 10. And it just takes time, you know, just to do it all. And I haven't, this has been a really busy spring and early summer for me. So I haven't gotten to take the time to do what I would really like to do with this. So
Yeah, there's never enough time.
no, there isn't. And but I really enjoyed doing this. I wish I did have more time. And it just depends on what's going on in my life. So I'm looking for my tree
Lisa
brush.
says that I think there's something on our DAA Mighty network as well.
Right.
The
I think that
community
is under
network. Yeah.
tutorials, I think.
Yeah, under tutorials. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I had asked you about it, and then I thought, oh, you know, I do remember that now. So
Here's a question. Do you always work freehand painting, or do you work with reference image using like tracing paper?
Sometimes I tend to do that more if it's a commission piece, because then it gives them more of what they thought in their mind with what they wanted. And incidentally, I have done quite a few commission pieces digitally. It's been it's been kind of a surprise for me, but I never really thought that people would be interested in it, you know, because being a traditional painter. But yeah, so it may be a little, about half and half maybe, because it just depends on what I'm doing. And if it's for myself, if I start with a photograph and if I trace whatever I'm doing and then turn that layer off and start to paint, sometimes I stay with it and sometimes it becomes something totally different. So I try not, because painting is, it's one of those things that I do to relax. I have a tendency to just kind of go with the flow of things. And sometimes it turns out well and sometimes it doesn't. So I think that's with everybody, every artist that I know. And then sometimes I just go right back to it about 3 or 4 months later and something about it makes sense, and then I just start creating something with it. You know, I'll lose interest in what I'm doing, or it's not working, and if it becomes a pain, then I just stop and start something new. And I try not to put a lot of pressure on myself with it, because it's too easy. You will do that. It's very easy to do that. Backgrounds, I usually will start with some sort of color. Most of the time I don't start just white unless I have that as an end goal with a lot of white. So I do this just so I can see the colors better myself. I know Karen likes to start with canvases, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. And I do, after I get started on a piece, I tend to forget about layers, and that reminds me I need to save this. So I'm at a point where if it goes away, we can bring most of it back up. And I'm still using the paper. And I'm waffling between colors here because I'm looking at 2 different photographs that I like both colors. They're a little different, and so I'm trying to find one to stay with. And I don't know if any of you have seen any of my videos. It takes me forever to edit one of those, and it's probably my program because I'm using iMovie on my Mac, but it came with my Mac, so I didn't want to invest in another program until I thought I could do it well. So they tend to be pretty expensive. and I could just drown myself in new technology, so I try not to do that. Did I answer that last question?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. I know that this foreground tree right in here, this particular tree will kind of take a little bit more center stage, but this is where I really want my focal point to be. So I'm not sure what because there's really not one in the photographs I'm looking at, and so I have a tendency to kind of think about it as I'm painting. So that's one of the reasons I look like I'm stumbling around, because I am. And when you have a photograph that you're really sticking with, it makes things a lot easier. But I change colors and all sorts of stuff. So let me look over here.
When you're working with a reference, do you, know, a lot of times the reference image can have all different light sources. Do you pretty
Right.
much decide upon a light source and then just kind of stick with it through the
I
painting?
do.
Okay.
I do. Because this was taken, I believe, somewhere around Colorado Springs. And I had been out in the morning and taken some photographs, and then around noon I had taken some photographs, and of course you got completely different light, and so you have to kind of make that up. And what I want, this is kind of, the light is kind of coming from this direction because it's late evening, this particular piece, or it might be early morning. I think it's the early morning one. And so I'm trying to establish some of the darks back here, but then bring in these lights. And so it's kind of tricky whenever you start doing that. And but still, you want to work with your depth. These are really warm colors that I'm going to bring in this cool background. But my foreground has to be warmer so that it shows depth. And then because you can show depth with color, and you can show depth with perspective. You know, so if you've got something high, say if I'm going to bring in some of these colors along here, and so that's kind of one of the things that I'll be doing is adding some of these lighter, more vivid foreground colors, but yet I still want to keep this particular area a center of interest. So those are all the things that I'm kind of think about doing as I'm working back here. There's some grays that run along this background area, kind of this, it's kind of a grayed down oranges. And so I'm kind of looking to do that. And normally what you would do in painting is you would add, you know, some of your violets to that orange. And I can do it, but I have to do it with the opacity and kind of bring some of that in. And then I'll end up blending some of that. So I can get a little bit of textures, but a little bit of grayed down colors that are back here. But as you can see, even with this color and this color comes forward this orange in the front, but this back here recedes. But then we're working at some complementary colors between the two. But the violets will make these colors pop. So that's, I have a tendency to really go for drastic light changes in pieces. I love that drastic light color and the vividness of it. I've got some dark colors that'll be down in here. And I'll lay in this color, and it can either be with a brush that's, you know, this has a little bit more color in it. Not quite as opaque, not quite as translucent. I'm just trying to lay in some colors. You kind of see where it's going. So a lot of times this will I'll lay in colors like this, and it may be just a value change in colors, and then I'll bring them all together with details and just kind of like smush it all together and make it work. And if you take the paper off, go ahead.
I wanted to mention something that I noticed that you have your Navigator open, and I like to have my Navigator open as well when I'm working. And it's real interesting to actually look down at your Navigator and look at your image in there.
It is.
Because you can really see those value changes there, and how they're affecting the whole perspective of the piece. It's really a nice tool to have open.
It is. It is. And if you're looking at your color wheel, you've actually got from about right here to about right here. This is your cool side, and this is your warm side. And sometimes you have to really, really look at that. Like if you're looking at purples, you got this color right here, and then you've got this color right here. They kind of compete for attention. It's actually more like this. I'll bring it over here. So anyway, that's color can really tell a big story. It helps you, once you learn what you're doing with your colors, to be able to work quicker in a piece, to relay distance in a piece. When you're out on location and you're out taking pictures, look at how the atmosphere around you is affecting the colors. In the falls, we have a tendency to have, a little bit more humidity in the air sometimes, and in the spring, especially in the spring here in Texas, we get these big storms, especially when the bluebonnets are blooming, and they end up, everything looks really misty and blue in the background, and it's exciting to look at, and trying to recreate that as an artist is a little daunting at times, but gosh, you really want it. My texture back on. But it's all a part of telling the story. You can see the difference the texture makes. For me, I really like it. And then I can blend it. I can take I use one of the Nature's brushes. One may already have it up here. I don't know if any of you have this particular category, the Nature brush category. I really like it. You can get some really cool looks with this grass brush down here. Go up and down, go sideways. It's really a cool little brush. I use it quite a lot, and I usually use it in the finishing stages of a piece. So I have another little brush down here that I call Excellent Ground Cover, and it's a brush that I've had for a really long time. Not sure. I think it's a liquid brush. It's probably made from one of the Sargent brushes, and I tend to use this as my ground cover brush, and it'll bring in a background real quick, a foreground or whatever you want. It brings in all these textures that you see. You know how whenever you're out, you can see different textures in the ground, and you don't have to put every blade of grass in. A suggestion goes a long way in a painting. I learned that from doing a lot of inkings. Just suggesting something tells a whole story, and people will think that it's detailed, but it's actually just a suggestion. And that's kind of what painters do when you're out painting on location, is you suggest things, and the better you are at suggesting, the better your painting is. So thinking about colors here. This is one of those brushes that I might paint a whole painting with. Let's see what it does up here on the trees. So I'll put some of this green in here, darker green. As I told Karen, I wasn't sure how much I would get done today, because my paintings they're not fast, so.
We still have a few minutes, so relax and paint.
If you start using these papers, you'll learn that as you rotate, you can get different looks, and it'll fill in other areas, but fill in a little differently. And so you do have to remember to do that. I'm going to pull some of these other colors in. These are, I think, it's either I'm not a tree expert, so kind of like these little aspens that shoot up here, I think. They could be a poplar, but I'm not sure. They were, whatever they were just starting to change. And I kind of wanted to show you a little brush that I made, which is a fun brush to use. And there's that blink. I'm not sure what I did to do that, but let's see.
Barbara had a question about the sky, the color of the sky, um, and whether you would keep it white because of the contrast and how it sets off and creates that perspective, or would you probably go in there and add clouds or more texture? What would you do?
No, probably not. It would probably pretty much remain the same. This particular piece, I believe, was early morning, and what I was planning on doing was doing some of this and then bringing over this soft brush and then taking, I don't know, some sort of yellowish color and then just brushing across it with another layer on another layer, and so that it kind of puts it in the background, because the sun is low and it's early morning and it really starts to make these colors pop, but it's only for a short time that it will do that, and then there's a lot of moisture in the air. So as I finish this, I'll definitely post it where everybody can see it, and I may even record myself finishing it up, and then you can, you know, see what I did to make that happen, if you'd like to do that. So I don't leave anybody hanging on it, and, but I do have a tendency to work very, very slow. It looks like I'm fast, but the brush work can be fast, but then I go back and forth just trying to get the looks that I want. And since I'm kind of putting this together, a lot of times the beginning stages of my painting are as important as the later stages, because once I get really comfortable with this background and kind of these medium colors, then when I start on that last part where I add other things and it just starts to pop and make sense, then that tends to go pretty quickly. But this stage usually takes me a little bit of time, and so that's, you know, I hope that answered that question. So I'm gonna drop that. Let's see. Wanted to show you all before we have to go, and since I've got a little bit of this, I'm gonna do it on one of these little trees over here. I like the colors that are in this little tree up here, but what's going to make these things pop? I have a base to work on, but then I'm going to take this little brush, and this is one of the little brushes we're going to be, you can get in the classroom. Karen, did you decide where we're going to put this, or maybe it's a couple of different places?
Yeah, we'll put it definitely in the class at Painter Club, but we'll also put it up at the community and probably Facebook too. So,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
Kathleen, you can certainly.
And what it is let me do another little layer. I'll do it darker so you can see it. And it's just this. Whoops, where'd I go? Which is wrong one. All right, stop. Let me go back over here. I think this is the one. Yeah, that's the one. And we've got, it's this little brush right here. It's kind of a cool little brush. It'll make making bushes really easy, but you kind of have to have a base to begin with, like I do up here. And bring this back down here and this. Sorry. You know how you can see at a distance sometimes in your photographs, and you'll know that there are leaves there because you'll see some of them, but you know, you can kind of add these little leaves, and so then you'll see them. But you can't overdo. You have to be careful and not overdo so that you've got a whole tree that's like this. But you can hit these little highlighted areas with some of your leaves, and you've got the little background areas. You can see them. I will show you the other little piece that I was working on. And let's see. I think it is. Let's see, which one did I just finish? Yeah. So as you can see, the little leaves in the trees. Well, hello. There he is. Pull that out so you can see.
It's just very subtle, but it just adds all that form and shape to
Yeah,
the tree. Yeah, beautiful.
it really does. It just kind of gives that little fluttery look, you know, that you see from leaves. And so it's really kind of nice that you can just play with them. And you can change the opacity of the brush, or you know, size, or what have you, and the way to feel, you know, to fit your own whatever you like to do. If you have let's go down here, grab a dark color. Let's just put some of this in here. Say this is a bush. You can make it larger. And as the bush is round, you might see these a little better. Dark area. And go back over here. But as you see, it looks kind of like a cartoon bush. So that's one of the reasons I say you don't really want to use this brush on everything to make a bush. But you can come and use another brush. And so if you get some texture in there, you add another color to it. So we've got a dark side, kind of a medium, and the light side. My light's coming from over here. And then come back over, and where's I changed the side of my brushes where they remain, so I keep going back to that same place. It was driving me crazy, but I wanted them in a new place. So anyway, you can kind of take and tap some of the brush into the areas, and you get kind of a feel for a bush with just some leaves that you're seeing, but it's not this solid shape. So as you look at it from the distance, you can actually see kind of some little leaves sticking out. And I have this right now it is made for, show it here, light pressure, small and lighter, and then heavy pressure, they get larger. You can always change this to work it the way you want it. So
Yeah,
it's a fun brush.
you're getting everyone excited about that brush now.
It's
And
a fun little brush. As long as it's not overdone, it'll be a nice little thing to have. But as you can see, what you can do with just subtly putting it in.
yeah, that is
So
beautiful. That is really beautiful. I love the I think one of the things that attracted me to your work originally was the color palettes that you use. They're just so beautiful. You know, they're so engaging, and they make so much sense when you're looking at them. You create so much beautiful light and form, and you just have such a delicate approach to your work too. It's
oh, thank you.
really beautiful to see. Everybody is enjoying your work. Lots of comments here, how beautiful it is. So it is a little after 10. So Kathleen, if you are are really willing to finish your painting on a video, that would be great.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
everybody would love to see how it ends up. Um,
okay, I'll start recording afterwards, and
Great.
I may talk through it, I may not.
Okay.
So
That would be fantastic. And um, Kathleen, before we close today, is there a website that you wanted to share where people can see your work or ways to contact you?
yeah, it's KathleenCaseyArt.com, and my phone number's on that, and my email. You can contact me through them. I'm also on DeviantArt. I'm on Facebook. I think it's Kathleen Casey Fine Art on Facebook. So yeah, a lot of different ways. I'm out there, and you can find me somewhere. So
All right, great. And of course, you're a member of the DAA community and in the Painter Club classes. So there's another place where you can see some of Kathleen's
yeah.
work.
Mhm.
She has a couple of videos. I think you have a video up on the community site which shows your painting process for one of your paintings as well.
Mhm.
Um, and
And
there's,
yeah, and I have a YouTube channel. I keep forgetting about
all
that.
right,
I've had it for a long time, but I finally just started putting some stuff up. So it's not huge yet, but there are a
good.
few videos on there. So
Yeah, it's always better to start off a little slower and make sure you have all that great content there that really
right.
represents your work instead of, just putting whatever up there. So I want to thank everybody for being here today, also, and supporting Kathleen in her debut.
I
And we
appreciate
really
it.
really enjoy your artwork, and I know we all look forward to seeing more of it. And again, any questions? The webinar will be recorded or has been recorded, and I will post it not only in Painter Club landscape class, Painter Club, and the community, and then Kathleen, I think, will be getting it out into her community as well. So thanks again. And Kathleen, thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Go off and have a great day, everybody. And thanks again. Take care.